I mean, I could not care any less about being the favorite or not being the favorite. We all start even par.
Scottie Scheffler has never been the loudest man in the room. That's part of why he became the best golfer in the world. Calm hands, even breath, no theatrics, no chest-pounding celebrations, just control. Week after week, tournament after tournament, Scheffler built his reputation on something rare in modern sports: emotional stillness. When others spiraled, he steadied. When pressure peaked, he slowed down. That's why, walking into Bethpage Black as the world's #1, expectations weren't just high, they were absolute.
I think at times this year I may have gotten overly frustrated. I think it's just part of the game. I think part of the game is controlling your emotions, is controlling your mind, and I've definitely gotten better at that over the years.
This was supposed to be his stage. The Ryder Cup thrives on energy, but Team USA needed an anchor, someone immune to chaos, someone who could absorb noise and turn it into precision. That was Scottie Scheffler's role, the calm in the storm, the player who didn't flinch. But storms don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they creep in quietly, and sometimes they don't break you from the outside. They wear you down from within. And that's where this story really begins. From the first few days at Bethpage, something felt different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just unsettled. The noise was louder than usual, the crowd closer, the emotions sharper. For most players, that kind of atmosphere fuels adrenaline. For Scheffler, whose game lives in rhythm and routine, it chipped away at something more fragile: focus. He didn't say it, he didn't show it, but inside, the balance was shifting. Scheffler's game depends on clarity, simple thoughts, clean decisions. But Bethpage didn't offer simplicity. It offered constant stimulation, chance bleeding into swings, tension lingering between shots, an energy that never settled. And when your greatest strength is composure, constant disruption becomes its own kind of pressure. Not loud enough to panic, just relentless enough to erode. The losses came early. Not catastrophic, not humiliating, just unfamiliar. 3 straight defeats to open the Ryder Cup. Each one felt less like a collapse and more like slipping on loose ground. Missed putts that normally drop. Pairings that never quite clicked. Moments where confidence hesitated for half a second. And at this level, half a second is everything. Analysts debated mechanics. Fans debated pressure. But what they couldn't see was what Scheffler felt. The quiet frustration of trying to stay himself in an environment that refused to let him breathe. And the harder he tried to remain calm, the heavier it became. That's the cruel irony of composure. When it's tested too long, it doesn't shatter loudly, it bends silently. The atmosphere around Bethpage continued to tighten. Noise escalated. Tension followed players from tee to green. But for Scheffler, the chaos wasn't a single moment. It was cumulative. 1,000 small disruptions pulling at the thread of concentration he'd spent his career mastering. He didn't lash out. He didn't react. He internalized it. And internal pressure doesn't disappear. It builds. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Not on the leaderboard, but emotionally. A beer cup flew from the crowd near Rory McIlroy's wife. The incident spread instantly. Outrage followed. Debates erupted. Security questions dominated headlines. But for Scheffler, the significance wasn't the clip itself. It was what it represented. A line crossed, a loss of control, proof that the environment had tipped from intensity into unpredictability. For a player who thrives on order, unpredictability is exhausting. Inside the ropes, tension mirrored the stands. Players jawed, caddies squared up. The Ryder Cup has always been emotional, but this felt different. It felt unstable. Less like competition, more like combustion. And still, Scheffler didn't explode. He absorbed. He stayed quiet. He stayed professional. But absorbing chaos doesn't make it disappear. It stores it. And stored pressure always finds a release. He did something rare. He told the truth. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't frame it as external failure. He didn't blame the crowd, the format, the pressure. He turned inward. He called it one of the lowest moments of his career. He said he let down his teammates, let down supporters, let down himself. The words weren't shocking on their own. It was the delivery. Flat, honest, unshielded. For the first time, Scottie Scheffler wasn't managing the moment. He was exposing it. And that confession changed how the entire week would be remembered. In a sport built on restraint, vulnerability hits harder than anger. Golf fans aren't used to seeing the world's #1 stripped of armor. Scheffler didn't unravel publicly. He allowed himself to be seen. And that visibility made people uncomfortable. Because if someone as composed as Scheffler could feel overwhelmed, what does that say about the environment he was placed in? Later, his social media post reinforced the message. No grand statements, no spin, just reflection, quiet accountability. It wasn't a PR move, it was a release valve. The pressure finally had somewhere to go. But the questions didn't fade, they multiplied. If you're enjoying this deeper breakdown, hit like and subscribe, because this story doesn't end at Bethpage. In the days that followed, the golf world argued about everything except the most important thing: alcohol policies, fan behavior, security protocols, media optics, all valid discussions. But they missed the core issue. This wasn't just about crowd control. It was about what modern golf is becoming. The Ryder Cup is no longer just competition. It's spectacle, volume, viral moments, emotion pushed to extremes. For some players, that's fuel. For others, especially those built on control, it's a test of identity. Scheffler didn't fail because he played badly. He struggled because the environment demanded something opposite to how he's wired. That's not weakness, that's mismatch. His absence from the team dinner spoke louder than any headline. Not dramatic, not angry, just introspective. He stepped away to recalibrate, the same way he always has. But this time, recalibration felt heavier, because the sport itself may be shifting away from the traits that made him dominant. European players were praised for composure, American players criticized for unraveling. But Scheffler sat somewhere in between, not imploding, not excelling, just exposed. And that exposure lingered, not as scandal, but as signal. Even as new clips surfaced, locker room frustrations, heated exchanges, viral sound bites, Scheffler stayed silent. And when he finally spoke again, it wasn't defiant, it was measured. Tough week, lessons learned, time to rebuild. Simple words, heavy meaning. That message became the real cliffhanger, because rebuilding implies something broke, not his swing, not his talent, but the balance between who he is and what the sport now demands. And that tension doesn't resolve quickly, it sits there, unanswered. Bethpage Black didn't just crown a winner, it forced golf to look at itself. How loud is too loud? How intense is too intense? At what point does passion stop elevating players and start suffocating them? Scottie Scheffler didn't lose control. He revealed the cost of maintaining it. Europe took the trophy, America took the criticism. But Scheffler walked away with something heavier than defeat: awareness. Awareness that even the calmest players have limits, and awareness that the future of golf may test those limits more often than ever. The question now isn't whether Scottie Scheffler will bounce back. He almost certainly will. The question is whether the sport will meet him halfway, or keep pushing until composure becomes a liability instead of a strength. Because if golf keeps chasing chaos, it may lose the very players who mastered calm. And Bethpage Black will be remembered not just as a loud Ryder Cup, but as the moment the quiet ones finally felt it. And that question still hangs in the air, unresolved and uncomfortable. Not about who won, but about what golf is becoming.